Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter.
470.
It is the last day of the week, aka the Big Bang Attack workout. I'm feeling very good right now, very excited for this workout. But anyway, to the main subject matter for today. First crush Heartbreak. So, the main reason why I want to discuss this is because I've been watching Fish Tank. Still, it's done by now, by the time this video ends. But there has been a storyline that's been happening where one of the contestants, well, he's just a freeloader, it fell in love with one of the other character, another freeloader, but not really fell in love, but started having a crush on her. And she said no, basically. In all words, no. And my boy that got rejected is a little autistic, so, you're telling me there's a chance is there. And we'll probably talk about that in a different episode and probably talking about autism, but it's a whole other story for a whole other day. This entire scenario is hard to watch if you are watching it from the outside, because I think most dudes have been in this realm where you've gotten that crush on the girl and you've basically been rejected, and it sucks. Let's be honest here. And it got me thinking about that entire thing, because it is a canon male event that happens to all men, all sizes really, where it's just not going to work out. But seeing it play out in live action, especially when the guy is autistic, so like he can understand for the most part certain social cues, but at the same time he doesn't understand them enough to understand that, nah dog. And it's like you're not going to really know what's happening until he's out of there, and then you can actually see all the clips and everything, and it's very interesting because there's also a dynamic with someone that she kind of is into, which I'll get into later a little bit, but which also plays a part of it too, because it's just not you, dog. It's a very hard thing to see, because I think most people go through this when they're younger, and like their early teens, like early mid-teens, like high school era, not necessarily when they're in their mid-20s, although everybody's development is a little different, obviously. But still, it's almost better that it happens earlier in life than later in life, because later in life, it's so much harder. And then if it's happening in like your 30s or 40s, what are you doing? Like, that's a different section. We'll talk about that probably later. But I think if it happens, it should be earlier. But in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that, the heartbreak in between, how it affects people. Some people, it driving them insane, some personal experiences, and a lot of other shit like that, because this is one of those videos that I've had in the books for a while, but I needed something to grasp onto, and this is the perfect example of that. So, with that being said, I will see you at Mother Base.
Alright, so started this day off with single arm lat pull down, which is pretty good, but anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. First crush Heartbreak. The main reason why I want to discuss this is because it is an interesting thing seeing this occur live when you're watching something, particularly because I was watching a live stream where people were living in a house for 30 days, and thus the ability to see this firsthand play out in real time is somewhat amazing in current technology, but as well that seeing it happen is kind of a crazy thing, because it only brings back memories of bad times and bad things basically in the past. Because I think that this is something that is relatively common. I don't think that many men can escape this. Now, of course, there are few that do. That I'm not saying that this is a universal thing, but it is a main canon event for many men across the world. I don't think that this is very foreign to a lot of guys when I talk about this. And I'm going to be talking mostly from the male perspective, because from the female perspective is a little different. Maybe a different episode for a different day, maybe even a different channel. We'll see about that. But the entire point is that basically it's just the idea of being infatuated with someone and realizing that this person does not share the same feelings that you have for them towards you. And it is a devastating thing to find that out, especially when you're young. Of course, this is a little different if you're older, also probably have some mental handicap, just stuff like that might make it so you don't actually understand fully what's going on. But also as well, maybe have never actually experienced this in growing up in childhood. Because I think this is something that happens maybe like beginning from middle school all the way through high school. You've had someone that you've been infatuated with, who you have a crush on basically, and then finding out that it's probably just one-sided. And it is something that sucks, because a lot of the times many people will end up defaulting into the friend zone, which will be a whole other episode for a different day. I think I've talked about it in the channel, but I don't even remember. But the friend zone zone is a very, very interesting subject matter, to say the least. I think that nowadays, or at least particularly when I was growing up, I think a lot of dudes who ended up getting into this zone, not necessarily the friend zone, but a zone where he's kind of like in a weird puppy dog like state, basically, around this girl. It's a very interesting thing to happen. I think that a lot of dudes default to this because it's almost like as if it's the one thing that they've learned from adolescence in order to like woo a woman, but in reality, the woman that you're wooing is just your mom, and that's a whole other weird thing if you think about it. But and I don't want to get into the Oedipus complex in this video, but the entire point is that that's where you would go to in a certain sense because you're kind of like predetermined to do something like that, which is weird, but also makes sense. I think that a lot of people just default to it, unfortunately. But it is interesting that we default to that because I think a lot of women, especially younger women women of the same age as you, especially when you're younger, don't necessarily want that. And most women don't necessarily want that, honestly. It's very rare where they would want that style of man around them. It's very rare. The biggest thing that I guess what happens is that a lot of issues, I guess, come along with the fact that women aren't necessarily good in being direct sometimes, especially when it's somebody that they actually find entertaining to be around or something along those lines. And thus, the man in this scenario will always think that there's a chance. And in this case, the live stream that I was watching, even to this day, I think he still thinks that there is a chance, which is a very sad thing to do. Leading people on is not necessarily a good thing, but I cannot necessarily blame the women fully because obviously that's just not how they're genetically predetermined to do those types of things. And it's understandable. It's like me getting mad at a dog who likes to sniff stuff. It's just not right. That's just how they are. So it is something that's interesting, but as autism has grown and become more of a thing in our society, and knowing that social cues are not as common or pick upable as they once were, people will take this little so you think there's a chance and just take it to the nth degree and just take it all the way, saying, I will be that 1%er, you know? And it sucks because when they realize that that is actually not the case, they will end up finally going through the heartbreak that this also comes down to. And whatever their heartbreak coping mechanism might be, whether it be emo music or just music in general, getting into a self-expression, a self-hatred, going to the gym, whatever it is just an interesting thing, especially when it goes early in your life, because it can really shape where you go in your life. Personally, I ended up probably falling into more nerd stuff, generally, is how I would say I coped with it. But as well, I got into running and also trying to get myself skinnier because I was a fat boy at the time. Still am, but you know, it is what it is. But it is something that just happens, and I think that it sucks, that heartbreak, that little like, damn, is this what it feels like? The first real, somewhat self-induced depression because of what you caused, the thoughts in your head of the person that doesn't actually exist up in your brain that all of a sudden made this basically life with this person, all of a sudden taken away by the sweep of reality. And it sucks because I think that everybody has experienced this at least one or two times before, and it's truly hard. But some people truly do let go of it and move on, learn from it. But there are some that cling on to that feeling for the rest of their lives and always thinking about the one and the very first one that got away and never went away in their hearts. And it's sad when that happens because they hold on to whatever it is for the rest of their lives, and those people are really just fucked.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises non-filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. First crush heartbreak. So the main reason why I want to discuss this is because, like I said before, this happened to somebody on a live stream, and it is insane for this to happen. You can see it all happening in real time. The getting feelings and heartbroken immediately. It's very interesting to see it play out in such a micro niche way, of course, but also just thinking about it just in general. It's a tough time, but it is a time that most dudes just kind of go through, unfortunately. But I think we all remember that, and it's something ingrained in us in a weird way where we just think about it and we're just like, I wonder where they are now, which will be a subject matter in a later episode because I saw a clip where it's the inverse of this, which we will talk about in certain other episode because it's slightly adjacent to this. So maybe that'll be the next episode. But I think that the heartbreak, the feeling that I think a lot of people get, or looking back and thinking about all the cringe things you may or may not have done, or just the things that you could have done or differently or whatever, is so interesting because I think that it's probably one of those things that people think about for the rest of their lives. It's not even like something that just kind of goes away or whatever. It will return randomly just because it's a door that once it's opened, the idea of you being emotionally attached to someone or wanting someone's attention or, whatever, that entire idea is planted in you and then it is taken away from you, whether it's your fault or unintentionally someone else's fault or whatever, you know what I mean? Or they're just not interested. Whatever it is, that feeling of just being so like, fuck, is such a powerful thing because some people get stuck there. If it happens at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and they're heavy into it, that heartbreak could last decades where they're thinking about this person non-stop in a certain way, which is an insane thing to happen. But at the other side of it, the whole, like, it could be a learning lesson for some or a missed opportunity, but thankful that you didn't go through with it type of deal. So there are different scenarios for what the aftermath of it is, but I think that it's so common that most guys will be like, yeah, there's a good, like, instantaneous I remember this. Not to say also that women don't go through it, but I think for guys, it's very different of an experience. And this is a guys only subject matter for today because, like I said, every dude's been there. I think we also know bros that have also been in this situation as well, where it's like, and it's tough. It's tough being on the other side of it, especially when you're younger, because it's like when you're younger, there's a lot more of a social, like, oh shit, you know what I mean? That happens with a lot of this type of stuff. Whilst later in life, you're more understanding, but also more like, come on, dog, you should know more about the world. But then again, some people live in ignorance, especially when it comes to the gender dynamics, as they want to believe that the way that they've been told how to interact with each other is the way to do it, when in reality, that's not how you're supposed to do it at all. There are certain cues and things that you can pick up from that, but not necessarily everything, because if you follow everything to the T, you're going to die alone or in a helpless or a hated marriage or divorce. One of the three. It's really that bad. But that's kind of also a different story for a different day, as we'll look at the gender dynamics via pop culture in a different one, because that is an issue in and of itself. But to go back, I think the crushing of the spirit part that happens is tough. I think most guys can understand that, where this is all of a sudden where they get that one emo song or the one depressing song that all of a sudden represents their, state of mind, really, and how they feel for the next X amount of weeks or months, depending, you know what I mean? And sometimes, depending on your personal situation, it can be really rough for a really long time. Sometimes it could be fine within the next few weeks or a few, months or whatever. But there is that period where all of a sudden there's going to be a song. There's going to be a song that reminds you of her, and then all of a sudden you're like, every time you hear it for the rest of your life. So it's just one of those things. But with that being said, this isn't random. This is something that happens to everybody. So I would love to know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. If you have a story of somebody that this has happened to, or it's happened to you, or it's never happened to you, please leave your story in the comment section down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Keep it heavy, stay safe out there, and stay warm, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!